it's not. That's on. Well, let's try that again. All discombobulated. And that's great. In a minute, we just can't seem to get going here. All right. Today we begin with Shemot, also known as Exodus, chapter 35. Those of you who can, please stand and cover yourselves for the reading of the verses. Okay, here we go. Vayakehel Moshe et kol adat b'nei Yisrael vayomer alehem ele ha-devarim asher ziva. Yahweh la'osot otam. Shishet yamin te'eseh melacha uvayom ha-shvi'i yiyeh lachem kodesh. Shabbat, Shabbaton, la Yahweh. Kol ha'oseh ve'ervo melacha yumut or yumat lo teva'aru esh bechol mishvotechem beyom ha-Shabbat. Vayomer Moshe el kol adat b'nei Yisrael lemor ze ha'davar asher ziva Yahweh lemor. Kehu meitchem teruma la Yahweh kol nediv libo yevieha et terumat Yahweh zahav vachesef unechoshet utechelet ve'argaman Tolaat shani veshesh ve'isim ve'irot elim me'adamim ve'irot techashim va'azeh sitim ve'shemen la'maor u've'samim le'shemen ha'mishcha ve'liketoret ha'samim. Ve'avnei shoham ve'avnei miluim la efod ve'la choshen ve'chol chacham lev bachem ya'bo'u ve'ya'asu et kol asher ziva Yahweh et hamishkan et ahalov ve'et michsehu et ke Rasaiv ve'et ke Rashaiv et be'richav et amudaiv ve'et adonaiv et ha'aron ve'et badaiv et ha'kaporet ve'et parochet ha'mosach et ha'shulchan ve'et badaiv ve'et kol kelaiv ve'et lehem ha'panim, ve'et menorat ha'maror, ve'et keleha, ve'et neroteha, ve'et shemen ha'maor, ve'et mizbach ha'ketoret, ve'et badaiv, ve'et shemen ha'mishcha, ve'et Toret hasamim ve'et masach ha'petach le'fetach ha'mishkan et mizbach ha'olah ve'et michebar ha'nechoshet asher lo et badai ve'et kol kelaiv et ha'kiyor ve'et kano et kal'e hechazer et amudaiv ve'et adaneha ve'et masach sha'ar hechazer et yitdot hamishkan ve'et yitdot hechazer ואת מטריהם את בגדי השרד לשרת בקודש את בגדי הקודש לאהרון, לאהרון, good Lord, הכהן, ואת בגדי בניו לכהן. ויצאו כל עדת בני ישראל מלפני משה, ובואו כל איש אשר נשאו ליבו וכל אשר נדבו רוחו אותו, הביאו את תרומת יהוה למלאכת אוהל מועד ולכל עבודתו ולבגדי הקודש. ובאו האנשים על הנשים כל נדיב להביאו הך ונזם בטבעת וחומז כל כלי זהב בכל איש אשר הניף תנופת זהב ליהוה. וכל איש אשר נמצא אותו תכלת וארגמן ותולעת שני ושש ועזים ועירות אלים מאדמים ועירות תחשים הביאו. כל נרים תרומת כסף ונחושת הביאו את תרומת יהוה, וכל אשר נמצא אותו זה שיטים לכל מלאכת העבודה הביאו. וכל אישה חכמת לב בידיה תבוא ויביאו מטבע את התכלת ואת הארגמן, את תולעת השני ואת השש, וכל הנשים אשר נשא ליבן ותנה בחכמה תבוא את העזים, והנשיאים הביאו את אבני השוהם ואת אבני המילואים לאפוד ולחושן, ואת הבושם ואת השמן למאור ולשמן המשחה ולקטורת הסמים. כל איש ואישה אשר נדב ליבם אותם להביא לכל המלאכה אשר זיווה יהוה לעשות ביד משה, הביאו בני ישראל נדבה ליהוה. ויאמר משה אל בני ישראל, ראו קרא יהוה בשם בצלאל בן אורי בן חור למטה יהודה. וימלא אותו רוח אלוהים בחכמה בתבונה ובדעת ובכל מלאכה, ולחשוב מחשבות, לעשות בזהב ובכסף ובנחושת ובחורשת אבן, למלות ובחורשת עץ לעשות בכל מלאכת מחשבת, ולהורות נתן בליבו הוא ואהליאב בן אחיסמך למטה דן. מילא אותם חמת לב לעשות כל מלאכת חרש וחושב ורוקם בתכלת וארגמן, בתולעת השני ובשש, ואור reg ose kol melachach vechoshve mahashavot. All right, you may be seated. 35. Woo, that was a long one. All right. In this chapter, God gives the instructions for the making of things necessary to construct the tabernacle. Onkelos Shemot by Drazin and Wagner states the following. Opinions differ as to when God commanded the construction of the tabernacle, before or after the sin of the golden calf. Much of what the Bible records now is also in 25:1 through 32:17, which contains clarifying commentary. As you know, ancient Hebrew text was written in the order of association, not by chronological order. This is why Onkelos' this particular translation doesn't understand. Not by chronological order. Keep that in mind. They go by association, so things are always going to be out of the specific chronology. Thus, it is not important to the story concerning which came first. That kind of thing is only important to those who think literally instead of Hebraically. This chapter contains several verses that are identical to verses found in chapter 25 and 30, and verses that are identical in every way except that a vav conjunctive or to has been added. Additionally, some verses are identical except that some words have changed tenses from future tense to past. Let me say before I go on that in Maimonides' work on the 613 laws, this is a work that was done by a man who truly knew nothing about Judaism. He claimed that he was a Jew, claimed that his father was a rabbi. He claimed himself to be a rabbi as well as the world's greatest medical doctor, and worked for the Sultan 22 hours a day. And in those 2 hours he had left over, somehow he wrote more volumes of work than a man could do in his entire lifetime if that's all he did. But somehow he did it. I have very little respect for this man. I think he has done more damage to Judaism than anyone else, than all others combined. He's done more damage because he did not know what he was talking about. So when he made the 613 laws, he made up his mind before he ever started that there were 613 laws. Why? Because the name of God adds up to the number 613 by Gematria rules. So if God's name adds up to 613, there must be 613 laws. That's the foundation. So he went out to prove that which he already believed. So when you run into these verses where they are identical, the Hebrew there is no difference, not even a tense, not even an added vav conjunctive, which is a reversing vav, not even that. I mean, when they are absolutely the same, he'll number the first sentence as, give that one number, and then the next one he'll number as a new law. And then when people realized that he had repeated, the same law and gave it two numbers, then they wrote 300-page dissertations as to why this law is different than that law. Okay, you know what? If God gave the law, it doesn't have to be 613. It could be 613 million. It doesn't make any difference. It could be 6. Whatever God decides the number should be, that's what it's going to be. And it's going to be based on how many laws do these idiot humans need. That's what it's going to be based on. It's not going to be based on the number that humans come up with in the Gematria thing that happened way after Sinai. Way after. That stuff didn't exist back then. So, to tell you the truth, the work that he did, the fact that he did it without a computer, it's pretty impressive that he got it did it as well as he did. But the truth is, it should never have been done. Categorizing that stuff is to make it Western and to completely erase all things that were original to the Jewish culture when this stuff was given by God. That is bad. So, I shouldn't have said all that. People are going to hate me now. Anyway, I don't like Maimonides. I don't like what he did. He was a man who studied to prove that which he already believed, and that is the number one rule that I have against all things religious. Do not study to prove what you already believe, because you'll find some reason, some way to make yourself right, no matter how wrong you are. Maimonides is a good example of that. So when a Vav conjunctive is added, when tenses change, that is not a new law. It's the same law. Tense makes no difference in Hebrew as far as we're concerned in English. There is a reason why they change tense, but they change them sporadically and sometimes without reason. Why? Because these were humans that did it, and sometimes they put it in the wrong tense. It's that simple. There is fallibility in humans, and God created us that way, so that makes it perfect. Just saying. In his commentary on the book of Exodus, Umberto Moshe David Casuto, left out his last name, wrote the following. In view of the fact that the repetition is mainly literal, it has not met with the approval of the majority of exegetes. Without paying attention to the differences or to the reasons for them, they express surprise at the lengthy passage that are iterated word for word. They don't understand why they would say it word for word again. And almost, continuing on with Casuto, and almost letter for letter. Actually, it was letter for letter, just saying. Since, in their view, it is inconceivable that the same author should repeat himself at length and verbatim, they came to the conclusion that we have here an addition posterior. In other words, somebody wrote an addition to the original after the fact. He goes on, to the date of the, after the fact, to the date of the sections containing the instructions. They're wrong. The first to express this view was Julius Popper in 1862. And after the leading exegetes of the time, I'm not sure how to pronounce this guy's name, Kuenen, Kuenen and Wellhausen, that's another guy, had approved his main thesis. So this is an idiot who didn't know what he was talking about, came up with a stupid thesis, and the two leading exegetes of the time said, hey, we like this. It must be right. All right, so they approved the thesis. Then the theory gained wide acceptance among biblical scholars. Of course it did. Even today, this section is attributed to the secondary strata of P. Whilst, I love how he says whilst, some distinguish as many as 5 different literary strands in it. However, this conjuncture, that's what he wrote. Conjuncture is based on ignorance. He said it's based on ignorance. I hope you guys know who Casuto is. He's one of the leading scholars of this last century. I guess that's the 20th century. Is that right? Because it was the 1900s. Yeah. He's a leading scholar. This guy has a pedigree, went to the schools that you can't even believe. And then he was, finished out his life as a professor at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. It don't get any higher up than that, right? And he said, they did this in ignorance. So it says, in ignorance of the methods employed in the composition of book, because I guess I better talk about what that P thing is. What he's saying here is this teaching came about saying that the Torah that we now have is made up of several different versions that were all kind of mumbo-jumboed together. Because in the Western world, particular among the Greeks, you don't repeat yourself over and over. You don't repeat yourself over and over. You don't repeat yourself over and over. Why would we do that, right? We say it one time. Now, we may say over and over, but we don't say you don't repeat yourself over and over. What we say is you don't repeat yourself over and over. Does that make some sense? You're not saying the whole sentence over and over. Maybe you say one word over and over, like I'm doing, but you don't say a whole sentence. You don't say a whole sentence. You don't say a whole sentence. Yeah, in Hebrew you do. That was something that you even found in the Ugaritic text that predates the Hebrew. They did the same thing in the same document, and nobody touched it. So it was stupid, based entirely on some person's theory. And this was a person who was not educated enough to have a theory, yet he gave it. And the guys who were supposedly educated enough that should have said, that's dumb, they went on and said, hey, that sounds like a great idea. Let's go with every wind of doctrine that comes down our door. And down went the exegetes. Anyway, so in ignorance of the methods employed in the composition of books in the ancient East, the theme of the founding and building of a shrine was a stereotype literary category in the early writings of Eastern countries, and it was usual for such passages to record first the divine utterance describing the plan of the sanctuary in minutest detail, and thereafter to give an account of the construction, which repeated in identical or similar phrasing the description given in the divine communication. This is indeed only a specific facet of the general technique of repetition, which was dearly beloved of the writers of the ancient East. The literary tradition of the land of Canaan, which is continued in biblical writings, is also found in this practice. It will suffice to cite here one example from the Canaanite works discovered at Ugarit. In the Ugaritic epic of King Keret, it is narrated that this monarch saw El, the father of the gods, in a dream, and received from him instructions concerning the offering of sacrifices, the mustering of a great army, the organization of a military expedition to the land of King Pabel, the request that Pabel's daughter or granddaughter be given him for a wife, and so on and so forth. These directives contain more than 90 lines. At the conclusion of the instructions, we are informed that King Keret did as El had directed him in his dream, and his actions are described by the literal repetition of the terms of the instructions. In other words, it's a complete repeat, except for changes in the forms of the verbs to indicate the past tense and other variations of formulas, such as a Vav conjunctive, a reversing Vav, more or less, he says, because it wouldn't have been the same thing, but it was very much like it. The substitution of synonyms, differences in the sequence of the words and the like, as well as other divergences arising from the altered character of the narrative. Precisely what we find in the present section of the book of Exodus. In the light of this style of composition, our section is not only not to be regarded as a latter addition, but is required where it is. In other words, it belongs there. Were it not, we should have to assume that it was missing from the text. It's supposed to be there, is what he's saying. This is exactly how they did things back then. It is not an addition. This guy was wrong, as was the people who said he was right and everybody else who's followed it. There is no P source. There is no X source, A source, G source. There is only the one, just the one. And it's written in typical form from that period. All right, so we're going to start with verse 1. Literally in English, it would say, and he gathered Moshe, all Adat children Yisrael, and he said to them, these the words that commanded Yahweh to do with them. All right, so it starts off, Vayakehel, and he gathered. It's to call together. Yo, everybody, get on down here. I'm sure he said it just like that, too. Moshe. So somebody gathered up Moshe, right? No, no, no. Remember, they do it the correct way. We do it the wrong way. So the way we should think of this is Moshe gathered everybody. Because you see what I'm saying? It sounds like it's saying somebody gathered up Moshe. Well, was he in 4,000 pieces and parts? Come on now. No, so Moshe gathered. Et, which is a pointer, kol, so that's all. Adat. Adat. That is edah in plural. We use the word synagogue. It's an appointed meeting, an assembly, a congregation of the Hebrews, a private domestic meeting, a family, in a bad sense, a crowd of wicked men, a swarm of bees. It's a congregation, isn't it? The Septuagint used the Greek word synagogein. Do you hear it? Synagogein, synagogue. That's why they use the word synagogue today. We don't. This is Edah Shalom Yisrael. Edah, hear it? That's the singular of Adat. This is in plural. So he's gathered all of the synagogues. B'nai, that's the children. I guess that's going to say Yisrael. So he has gathered all of the synagogues of the children of Israel. Well, there was no synagogue back then. Yeah, there was. Just because there wasn't a building didn't mean there wasn't a synagogue. You heard Christians say that some church gets burned down or knocked down in a tornado or something. Everybody's, well, but the church is still here because the church is the people. Well, synagogein, edah, adat, that's all has the same sort of meaning. The people are what make it a synagogue, right? The building is just where the people meet. And though they call it a synagogue, it's just like what the Christians do. They stole that from us, by the way. I'm just saying, just throwing that out there. All right, so it's the synagogues of the children of Israel. Then it says, Vayomer, and he said, he shed light on the subject. Alehem, so he said to them, Elah, these ha-devarim, these words, speech, discourses, precepts, royal mandates, these words, asher, that ziva, commanded. But that's not like Ziva from the TV show. It does sound like it, though. Not exactly. Commanded, set up, constituted. These are the ones that commanded Yahweh. So we're thinking, oh, so somebody commanded Yahweh, right? No, remember, they're doing it the correct way. We do it backwards. So Yahweh is commanded. These are the words that Yahweh commanded, right? La'asot, commanded to do. Properly, to labor, to work about anything, to produce. By labor, to manufacture, to fabricate. So these are the things that you got to do. It's going to take some effort. Then it says otam, so that's with them. Here's the translation. And Moshe gathered all the adat, all the synagogues of the children of Yisrael, and he said to them, these are the words which Yahweh commanded you to do. Gasuda wrote, not, of course, all 600,000, nor yet a congregation in the sense of an assembly or council, as has been suggested by the majority of the heads of the clans who represented the people as a whole. The word all is used as a rule imprecisely. This is not, I do not agree with him at all. That is not how this word is used. Yes, it is used hyperbolically at times, but it is not used imprecisely. So he's saying this is not, of course, all 600,000. Why not? Well, because we know that he's right about this part, or could be right about this part. Doesn't mean that he is, but he could be, because women and children weren't counted back then, right? And women and children didn't necessarily go to the synagogue. If your child is too young to show the proper respect and be quiet and restrained in the synagogue, I mean, from the very beginning, they weren't allowed in there. So the children knew that everybody else is going to the synagogue, and they want to go with everybody else as they get older, old enough to understand this sort of thing. And so they learn to behave themselves so they can go and be a part. So it's not uncommon that women and children didn't go, because the women aren't going to just leave the children to their own devices, right? So he could be right, but in this time and place, why not? They weren't inside a building. Couldn't hurt anything for them to be there. They could sit there and play in the dirt right there on the spot. I don't know. No, there's no way to know. But anyway, he's being real specific, real definitive here, and I don't know if I can agree with that. Even Ezra, Nachmanides, and Rashbam all felt that all meant everyone, man and woman. And I'm assuming they meant child. I agree partially with Kasuto. All did not always mean everyone, but would like to have been able to ask him, on what are you basing this opinion? Yes, there are times when the Hebrew text indicates that all is only speaking of the leaders in those cases, not the whole congregation. Additionally, why would he suggest that only a majority of the leaders attended? Because that's what he said. Why wouldn't all mean all, at the very least, that all the leaders? Why would he say the majority? That kind of threw me. Now, Rashi also pointed out that this event took place on the 11th of Tishrei, which is the day following the Day of Atonement. That's maybe, may not. The argument is very convincing, but it's still just an argument. We shouldn't teach things as fact that are still just arguments. All right, so we got verse 2. Literally in English, 6 days you shall do workmanship, and day the seventh he will be to you holy Shabbat. Shabbaton to Yahweh, all the make or that make in it, workmanship he dies. This is interesting. And remember, the whole buzz here is because a lot of stuff's being repeated. Yes, we've already had some of this stuff. So it says Sheshet, that means 6. And that's really all it means. Yamin, 6 days. Te'aseh, you shall. This is a command. You shall do. You'll do your labor, your work, your producing and your manufacturing and your fabricating, and whatever it is that you do for a work. 6 days you do that. Melacha, your workmanship. You're fabricating whatever it is you do. So if you're a welder, for 6 days you weld. If you run a nursery, for 6 days you're planting plants or watering plants or picking weeds or whatever you do in a nursery. I don't know. Or if you're running a daycare, 6 days you're taking care of them babies. Uvayom, and day, very literally, ha shivi'i. And on the 7th day, it will be lachem, to you, kodesh. So the 7th day will be holy. Kodesh is holiness. It's what is holy, a holy thing, a thing consecrated to God, especially the things that were made to be used only in the temple. Specifically, they say of the body of the temple, a most holy thing, they say, as the ark, the vessels, the holy vessels that were in the temple. The innermost part of the temple is holy, but the people are holy, right? And part of what makes something holy is that it is set aside for one specific thing. So if we're going to make the Sabbath day holy, we literally have to do the same thing every Sabbath, which in this case is rest. So if we go to Sabbath service, we have to do that every week, and we essentially have to do the same thing. We study Torah. So you can't just do it once in a while. You have to do it the same way all the time, is what I'm saying. So we have this, the holy, then it says Shabbat. That's to rest, to keep a day of rest. The primary idea appears to be that of to sit down, to sit still, used of men as opposite to labor. And then it says Shabbaton. So that's the same word, only it's in plural. So now it says La Yahweh, so it's to Yahweh. And this is Ha-Oseh. that's to labor, to work about, to manufacture, to fabricate, to produce. It's that asa is the root of it. Though it's in it, melachah. So anyone who does their workmanship in that day. So if you're a welder and you weld on the Shabbat, eek, guess what it says? You mocked. He dies. Dies. To die. Death, dead. To kill. Used of death, whether of men or beasts. To perish, to be destroyed. All right, so your translation. 6 days you shall do servile work, but the seventh day will be for you a holy Shabbat, Shabbaton. It will be a holy, restful rest. I say it that way. To Yahweh, or for Yahweh, it's for him. Everyone who does servile work. Everyone who does servile work. Remember it said moot? He dies. It's an idiom. Everyone, because think about it. Everyone within the sound of my voice has worked on the Shabbat, right? And every one of you is still breathing air. So think about it. Must be an idiom. Everyone who does servile work separates himself from God. And the more servile work you do on Shabbat, the further you will find yourself from God. It is cumulative. Nachmanides, Rashi, and the Sephorno saw this verse as a warning against working on the tabernacle on the Shabbat, mainly because they did not understand why this command was placed here since it had already been given. Right? They're Western. They don't know enough about Judaism to know anything about Judaism. Oh, wait, Rob, these are the Jewish sages. Doesn't mean they were Jews, and it doesn't mean they knew anything about it. I mean, Onkelos wasn't Jewish. They call him the proselyte. And on it goes. There's a lot of people that weren't Jews that set up what we now call Judaism. And they were westernized, Western-thinking people, most of whom didn't even speak the Hebrew language. That really bothers me. Cassuto wrote this. When Moses was given the instructions, it was sufficient to cite this prohibition at the end of chapter 31. As the time had not yet come for the command to be carried out, but now, at the moment of implementation, it was necessary to proclaim the prohibition at the very beginning and to tell the Israelites from the outset that only 6 days shall work be done. So what he's trying to explain to you why this is in here twice. Not because it was supposed to be in chronological order. That didn't even exist in the biblical period. They still didn't know what chronological order was in the New Testament period, in the Second Temple period. Nobody that was Jewish knew what that was. That was something wholly Western. So people who didn't speak Hebrew, that grew up speaking Greek, they probably knew what it was. But the Jews who grew up speaking Hebrew, the Israeli Jews, they would have had no idea what that was. And it doesn't show up in any of the writings from the Second Temple period either. You have to go way past it before you're going to find something like that. So it's essentially what he's saying. It's because of the association. Now that we're back to this part, we're actually going to start building it. We have to go back over the law again because it associates to this. There's a reason why the Jews repeat. Cassuto based this part of his argument on that which good scholarship now knows because of the relatively recent findings of the Ugaritic text, and thus our better understanding of what we now know to be typical writing styles of the place and time in which the Torah was written. Here's his translation of verse 2. But on the seventh day, even at the time when the tabernacle is being built, there shall be to you a holy day, a Sabbath of entire rest unto the Lord. Whosoever does any work on it, even sacred work, shall be put to death. One thing that stands out to me are the words, even sacred work. The Sephorno also agreed that sacred work cannot be performed on Shabbat. This argument bothers me because Numbers chapter 28, verses 9 through 10, commands the Kohanim to kindle and keep a fire burning while they are sacrificing animals, which is the work they do for a living, on the Shabbat. So we're going to return to this in verse 3. Onkelos Shemot by Drazin and Wagner states, the punishment for Sabbath desecration is found in Numbers 15, 32 through 36. The Jewish Study Bible by Oxford translates those passages as follows. Once, when the Israelites were in the wilderness, they came upon a man gathering wood on the Shabbat day. Those who found him as he was gathering wood brought him before Moses, Aaron, and the whole community. He was placed in custody, for it had not been specified what should be done to him. Then the Lord, in all caps, so that was God's name in other words, said to Moses, the man shall be put to death. The whole community shall pelt him with stones outside the camp. So the whole community took him outside the camp and stoned him to death, as the Lord, in all caps, had commanded Moses. I want to remind everyone at this point that there were certain rules and thus punishments that applied only to the time of the wilderness. Do you remember us talking about that? We went over this in chapter 12. This man was put to death because God delivered him directly out of the bondage of Mitzrayim. That's Egypt, if you don't know. And God provided for his every need. Not only that, but this man spoke the words with his own mouth, we will do and obey at Sinai. Those words came out of his mouth. This is a far more egregious crime than it would be to someone today, if in fact it still is a sin to do so. For it to be a continual sin, it will have to show up in what we now call the 613 mitzvot. I also want to point out here that there are very few Jewish men who believe that their wives' cooking, cleaning, and serving during the time of Shabbat should cease. I'm just saying, just throwing it out there. Okay. Verse 3. Not you shall kindle fire in all dwellings, you and they the Shabbat. Oh, some of you are going to hate me. But remember, I'm just the translator. I didn't write it. I'm not the one who laid out the laws. I'm just the translator. Starts off low. That's the negative article. And it is connected to teva aru. Not you shall kindle he or it. To depasture a field, a vineyard. To kindle as firewood. To burn up, to consume by fire, to take away, to remove, to exterminate a land, a people from a land. It is from the root ba'ar, to feed upon, to eat up, to consume. Use of cattle, consuming a field, to glean, to gather a bundle, especially to consume with fire, to burn up, to kindle, to be consumed with fire, to burn as fire, to be kindled, as used metaphorically of anger, to be brutish and fierce. Then it's the word esh, the word that imitates the sound of fire. Fire, fever, lightning, also figuratively used of the anger and wrath of God. Poetically, though, or so that to be consumed with fire is, in other words, to be destroyed in war. Fire and burning are used in Hebrew to designate any destruction, whether of men or things. Heat of the sun, splendor, brightness. But hey, there's a grammar rule. When speaking of men, of human beings, it is applied to internal love of the mind. In other words, passion. Bechol, that means in all, in everything. Mish votechem, in all dwellings you, in all your dwellings. It's a seat, a place for sitting, a sitting down. An assembly of persons, habitation, dwelling place, time of inhabiting. It's wherever you hang out. Beyom, in day. in a day. Ha-Shabbat, in the day of Sabbath. That's the rest. To keep as a day of rest. The sitting down is the primary idea, right? There are three legitimate translations that can be taken from this Hebrew, from the Hebrew verse. We will begin with the first two. First translation, first possibility. You shall not kindle a fire in any of your dwellings during the time of the Shabbat, which is why traditionally today among the Jews, they kindle their fire Friday before sundown, and then they just stoke it and keep it going, throughout the night and stuff so they can stay warm the next day. Here's another possibility. You shall not burn a fire in any of your dwellings during the time of Shabbat. Yeah, nobody wants that one, right? We got to stay warm. Rashi said that this verse was added here either to show us that a person who kindles a fire on Sabbath should be flogged, not killed, or to show us that when a person has committed several sins, he has to atone for them individually. I'm just going to move on. Even Ezra, Nachmanides, and Rashbam all agreed that the Shabbatot that take place during the weekly, in other words, the Sabbath that are connected to a feast, are okay to kindle a fire. Because see, your feast move from place to place, right? And one day one year your feast Sabbath will be on a Monday, and the next year maybe it's a Wednesday, and the year after that maybe it will fall on a Saturday. But they believed they had to come up with some reason for this verse being here, right? And so they're all trying to be real creative, and they're saying, well, we think that what this is saying is you can kindle a fire on the Sabbath that doesn't take place on Saturday. So if they are right, okay, let me see. Feast are the kindle. I'm assuming they believe that the command was only for the Saturday Sabbath. So if they are right, why did God call the Shabbaton that land on weekdays Shabbaton? And why did he command all work to cease on those days? Did he not know the difference? I mean, because it's really what they're saying. They're saying God didn't know the difference. So they're going to clarify for you. Onkelos' Shemot by Drazin and Wagner state the following. Various opinions have been given, such as, number one, kindling may not have been considered as serious an offense as other work. Number two, to highlight the fact that the violation of a single act of work, even a relatively easy one, is punishable. Number three, to inform us that although it is permissible to us or to use fire for cooking when a festival occurs during the week, this permission is not granted on the Sabbath. Or number four, although fire is necessary for sustaining life, it is still prohibited on the Sabbath. So, hey, if you freeze to death on the Sabbath, too bad for you. I wrote in here, see also the Babylonian Talmud, Shabbat 70a. It says, the Sadducees and later the Karaites, two Shemitic Jewish sects who read the Pentateuch, in other words, the Greek Torah, literally without the teaching of the oral law, believed that it was also prohibited to enjoy fire on the Sabbath, even when it was kindled before the Sabbath. Thus, it is clear some Yehudim, some Jews, believe it is acceptable to kindle a fire before sundown on Friday and then just keep the fire burning through Shabbat, while others believe that a fire can neither be kindled nor burned during the Shabbat. This may be why the Sadducees have disappeared and the Karaites are on the verge. Just throwing it out there, just thinking out loud here. Kasuto argued that this verse was added to show us that kindling of fire was actually work and not just the preparation for work. He also added, incidentally, the Torah says, in all your habitations, to inform us that the prohibition does not apply only to work done in the tabernacle, but also to that performed in the private dwellings of the Israelites, in their tents in the desert, and subsequently in their houses in the promised land. All right, let's go back to Casuto's translation of verse 2. It says, "But on the seventh day, even at the time when the tabernacle is being built, there shall be to you a holy day, a Sabbath of entire rest unto the Lord. Whosoever does any work on it, even sacred work, shall he put to death." Let's talk about the words, even sacred work. The Jewish Study Bible by Oxford translates, I think we already did this, but 28, 9 through 10, Numbers 28, 9 through 10 as follows. On the Sabbath day, 2 yearling lambs, okay, so I didn't do this. On the Sabbath day, 2 yearling lambs without blemish, together with 2/10 of a measure of choice flour, with oil mixed in as a meal offering, and with the proper libation, a burnt offering for every Sabbath, in addition to the regular burnt offering and its libation. In the end, we are to cease from our work on the Shabbat, not God's work. Additionally, these sacrifices cannot be made on the Shabbat unless someone kindles or at least keeps a fire going from before sundown Friday. Not only that, but the Kohanim must keep the fire burning during the Shabbat. They must perform the work of the regular burnt offerings and libations, as well as these additional sacrifices on the Shabbat, on the Sabbath. It is obvious to me that a simple Hebrew idiom has been missed. Let's look at some simple grammar rules that should have been applied, and then let's see what the verse actually says. The verse began with Lo teba'aru, you shall not kindle, or you shall not burn, could be either way. The subject here is you. You. It's not kindling, it's you. Next, we find the word esh. Here's the pertinent rule of grammar. When speaking of men, it is applied to internal love of the mind, i.e., passion. Thus, you shall not kindle passion, or you shall not burn with passion. By following these simple rules of Hebrew grammar, we no longer need to force a dim-witted argument about this verse, somehow teaching us not to work on the tabernacle on the Shabbat. Here's your translation. You shall not burn with passion. Adults, do you understand what I'm saying here? I'm trying to be delicate. You shall not burn with passion in any of your dwellings during the time of Shabbat. Donna, do you know what I'm talking about? Do you think they do? Okay. There is a strong precedence for this one. God commanded the children of Israel to purify their clothes and their bodies and not to draw near to their wives. In other words, not to have passion, since they were about to enter into the presence of God. Do we remember what the scriptures have taught us that the Shabbat is for? It is for Yahweh. Shouldn't we be pure during that time set aside for Him? That's all the time we have for today. I hope you guys don't hate me from now on. But remember, I'm just the translator. I didn't come up with this stuff. Shalom, shalom, y'all.